Tourism is about the word tourism. It's about interaction. All right, different cultures, people meeting with each other and sharing their different or trying to see where's the link between one culture and the other. Is the natives a sense of, apart from providing employment, it gives the natives a sense of caring, a sense of joy, a sense of satisfaction. And all those are the key things that you need in order to preserve and conserve some of these lovely habitats, some of these the animals that we have, to ensure that the next generation would see these things and enjoy it. When you talk about a holiday in the Caribbean, one of the first things that come to a lot of people's mind is sun, sea, and sand. There's a lot more to some of these Caribbean islands. On Tobago, we are into ecotourism, and because of that, you can go to places, you can go to the rainforest, you can see our lovely birds, you can go to the islands, the Little Tobago and St. Giles Island Bird Sanctuaries, and see lovely seabirds again. During the night at the right time of the year, you can just hang around on the beaches, as we say, lime around on the beaches and see a giant leatherback or a hawksbill, if possible, a loggerhead turtle coming into nest. Into the marshes, you see our lovely wetland birds. You go to the reefs around the island. We have the Buko Reef, we have the Angel Reef at Speyside, and all around the island, lots of reefs, and you can see the lovely parrotfishes, sea cucumbers, the lovely brain corals, soft, hard corals around the island. So there is a lot more to the island than just sun, sea, and sun. You don't have to lie on the beach all day. You can go out and really appreciate where the strength of the island lies. So we have quite a number of things. We also have two other treasures, and that's to do with these seabirds, Little Tobago and St. Giles. Those islands located where the Caribbean Sea, the Atlantic, and the Gulf Stream comes in. And over there you can see one of the most beautiful seabirds, and that's the red-billed tropic bird, a bird that was featured on the Trials of Life at one time. The red-billed tropic bird it's a beautiful seabird. It's about 40 inches. 20 inches is in bird itself, and then it has a long streamer tail, which is another 20 inches. It has a brilliant scarlet or red bill. Very clumsy bird when you see it on the nest or if it's moving around on the floor. But once it's airborne, it's graceful, elegant, anything you can think about in terms of aerodynamics. That's the red-billed tropic bird. Another spectacular bird that can be seen off the coastline, mainly between the wintering months, as we see. Very interesting is the osprey, the only sea eagle. Um, Lovely bird to watch if you can see him fishing or see the bird fishing. Um, it's the only bird that would come with talons only into the water and pick up the fish. Amazing eyesight, like most seabirds. But the osprey is really an elegant bird to watch, and it's always a bird that you cannot get enough of. Another seabird that is common, it's actually our largest bird. It's called the magnificent frigate bird. A bird that can be seen anywhere along the coastline or even inland, because we are only 7.5 miles at the widest point. And these birds are commonly seen. They have a forked tail, and they're fairly large birds, 7 feet wingspan from wingtip to wingtip. So it's a very large seabird, and it has a funny looking bill. Most people say the bird looks prehistoric. Um, and another important factor about these birds is that the way how they get their food. Frigate birds don't ever land on water, or they cannot land on water because their wings become waterlogged and they are unable to fly. So they have to feed off the other birds, the other seabirds. The other seabirds do the hard work, like the red-billed tropic bird, the brown boobies, the laughing gulls. And these birds would be parasitized by these frigates, who would catch them mid-air and force them just by overpowering them with sheer power and everything else, and force them to regurgitate their fish, and usually catching it before it hits the water. It can be seen commonly when the fishermen pull in their seine. These birds they come in very close, and when they are throwing away some of the fish that is not needed, the smaller ones, the frigate birds would come down and definitely pick it off from the surface of the water. Very interesting birds, frigates. We locally call them man of war, which means men of war, really. Um, they have other very strange characteristics, like stealing not only from birds but nest building materials as well. Not only fish but nest building materials they steal. And they have a tendency as well, the males, to tear one another's pouch while they're on the nest. All right, so these birds, as though their minds have just been developed to steal from others. Along the shoreline, walking around, especially in the evening, once there's a bit of food, you can see ruddy turnstones. You can find these sandlins and spotted sandpipers, solitary sandpipers, all these bird grabbing bits and pieces of tidbits just before the wave comes in. Sometimes you have to be very good in terms of the bird, of its timing, or it's washed away. But that's the way how they get their food, and they can be found along the shoreline. Sandlins, ruddy turnstones, spotted sandpipers, solitary sandpipers, etc. You can also see brown boobies, red-footed boobies as well, and they can be seen on those offshore islands, or even sometime close to the coastline. You can see the brown boobies. Very elegant bird, brown on the back with white breasts, bright yellow feet, which is used in courtship. The red-footed boobies as well, as the name implies, bright red feet. They are very interesting birds, in that there are two phrases. You have a white phrase and you have a brown phrase of these red-footed boobies on Little Tobago and St. Giles. These birds, the white phrase, they are very few. In fact, the brown outnumber them by 20 to 1. Something that is not really known what's the reason for it, but they can be seen as well. The white ones are really elegant birds, almost white with black wingtips and bright red feet. Brown pelicans is another bird that is a favorite to a lot of people. These brown pelicans They can be seen fishing off the coastline. Very good indicator to the local fishermen that it's time to get those nets out and get them into the water once you see the presence of these brown pelicans. Usually accompanied, though, they don't all get the fish to themselves. They are usually accompanied, especially at the time of the year when the laughing gulls, they are migrants. That's another seabird that can be seen. Um, when they are here again between the months of about November back to April, May. These birds never ever give the pelicans a chance. The pelicans would dive into the water, but immediately in very close attendance is the laughing gulls trying to get bits of fish. The pelican must try to get out as much water as possible. The bill of the pelican is designed with those two openings on the cheek on this side in order to drain the water out, and that gives the laughing gulls an opportunity to get bits and pieces of the fish that the pelicans have worked hard in order to achieve. In the freshwater areas, which is rich in terms of marine life, it's a terrestrial habitat, but there's lots of fish in it. One of the birds that you'll find there regularly is the anhinga, which is family of the darters. We locally call it a snake bird. That bird has a very sharp bill which it uses as a harpoon. Anywhere you see cattle on the island, you are likely to see a white bird, which is a cattle egret. The birds and the cattle, they have a mutualistic relationship in that when the cattle disturbs the undergrowth, the egrets get the invertebrates. And whenever there's any parasites on the cattle, the egrets would pick them off. Another one of those habitats that we are very fortunate to have on Tobago is the marshlands, which we call the mangrove forests, which supports most of our wetland birds, the wild ducks, the herons, the waterfowls, and so on. It also supports all the fish that comes in there to spawn because of the saline, fresh, or what we call fresh and salt water mix, those brackish water conditions. And that supports a very rich habitat, aquatic insects, frogs, and so on. And of course, a lot of aquatic vegetation as well. And that's for the ducks and the herons and so on to feed on. Along the banks you have frogs, tiny frogs, which birds like the southern lapwing, which feeds on these frogs. We have the wattle jacanas, and they would be feeding on the aquatic insects as well. We have the black-bellied whistling ducks, lovely birds, and they can be found there as well, along with white-cheeked pintails, blue-winged teals, which are migrants, so they are here a certain time. Pied-billed grebes, least grebes, all these birds can be found in the marshes, upending, and it makes getting out on a morning very early, between 6 and 9 o'clock, which is really the best time for bird watching in the tropics. And walking through these wetlands could be pretty worthwhile, very worthwhile actually. The abundance of the bird life you will see in these marshes, purple gallinules, moorhens, and so on can be found. Herons, like the black crowned night heron. That is a very beautiful bird, very secretive, and as the name implies, mainly found during the night, unlike his close cousin, the yellow crowned night heron, which is really an opportunist bird. That bird can be found anytime during the day. Sometimes you wonder when the bird sleeps. our smallest heron is, which is the greenback, or locally called striated heron. A bird that has been, they've been doing a lot of research on recently, because they are now discovering that there's actually there are different species, greenback and striated, of the herons. They are the smallest of the herons, and they can be found again anywhere where there's an opportunity, where there's a bit of water, where there's likely to be food, wherever the habitat presents itself, presents an opportunity. It's likely that you'll find greenback herons. Little blue heron, another lovely bird. Um, a bird that confuses a lot of people in its juvenile stages, because it looks like a cat egret. It's all white, but if you look at it carefully, it has green legs, and the bill is different. It's not a yellow like a cat egret's bill, and it's longer. At 1 year, those birds go through a transition, which we call a calico phase, going from white to blue. And if you catch them between, just in that transformation stage, it's one of the most beautiful birds you can see. Wetland areas in years gone by has always been considered wastelands. And throughout the Caribbean, not only Tobago, you would find these habitats were filled in and taken away. People not understanding their ecological values, and in terms of the animals and plant life that they support. But they are very important habitats. They sustain the wetland birds, their habitat, their resource, their nesting sites, brown pelicans, um, whistling ducks, white-cheeked pintails, the moorhens, the gallinules. That's where they nest, that's where they feed, that's their home, that's their habitat. Even some of the migrant birds that come in, um, when they fly south, they are coming to these habitats. They depend on these habitats for food and nesting sites. That particular habitat is very important, and should be conserved and be seen for what they really are, and not what we think we can turn them into. And because of that, the island is going through transition changes. There is a lot of pressures on habitats, on because of development, and that sort of thing. It would be sad to see, especially with all the information available to us now, to see the island make mistakes as some of the other islands. Um, we should realize where our strengths lie, and which is ecotourism, and we do not have to make the mistakes of some of the other islands. We can build on our strengths, and we can have a sustainable tourism product that can last many, many years. Because of the fact that two-thirds of Tobago is mountainous, a factor that when you just arrive on the island you would not realize, because it's flat down on the southwestern tip. You're coming in from the airport area, and you don't realize that 4 miles in, the island starts as very steep elevation, which rises up to a maximum height of just under 2,000 feet. But that presents to you a landscape that is very mountainous. And as you get into those hills, because the island is still relatively untouched and unspoilt, you see all the forest, the greenery, the amazement of just a massive green landscape. And you wonder, well, this is the thing that I've dreamed about all the years, visiting an island that has all these lovely forests. And in those forests, of course, there's a lot of life. There's a lot of colors, a lot of bromeliads, a lot of orchids, a lot of flowering plants. And of course, that goes along with the lovely birds that can be found in those altitudes. The green birds, everybody's favorite, anywhere in the world. A lot of people have seen their orange-winged parrots. A lot of people, they have seen parrots, but they have seen parrots in cages. Here you see the birds, they are in the wild, they are just in their natural habitat, and there's virtually, no threat to them except that they are classified as agricultural pests. It's the only large size parrot on the island, feeding on the motels, which provides a rich food resource. A work of art, some large pendulum-shaped nest. You can see them hanging off the motel trees right to the very end of the branches, put there in order to protect themselves from as much predators as possible. Locally in Tobago we call it a cornbird. It's a crested oro pendola, a bird that you can find in almost every habitat, but now they are retreating because of development, mainly to the forest areas. And you can see them on these bright orange flowers, the trees with the bright orange flowers mounting in motels. Hanging on the end there, it looks very careless, reckless. They can fall anytime. They look like they're just hanging from a string, and they look very unstable. However, close examination would show you that these nests are very well made. It is a weaver bird. They are very well weaved together. And obviously they are put on the end of those branches in order to prevent predators as much as possible. A flash of red, bright red, up in the canopy, it can only be a color trogon, Tobago's most beautiful bird. There is a saying that color trogons, whenever you see one, these birds allow you to see them. The coloration there would suggest that the female would be the one who would be doing most of the nest, most of the incubating of the eggs. The males, their colors are so bright that they would be a giveaway to predators. Another very beautiful bird, and it's it's many people's favorite really. It's called the blue-crowned motmot, a bird that is pretty widespread, but it's not the easiest of birds to see if you don't know what you're looking for. But once you see it, it always warrants attention because of the fact that the bird has that unusual racket-shaped tail, which it means that the feathers come out to the end and then the feathers break, and then there's just these two veins, and at the end again these feathers come out like a racket. It's the only bird that has that sort of tail structure on the island. It's the only motmot on Tobago, and it's called the blue-crowned motmot. Again, the colors, the iridescence. If you see it in the understory of the forest, you don't really appreciate the beauty of the bird unless you see it out in the sunlight where all the colors come out. It's really a lovely bird to see. We should understand that the main Ridge Forest Reserve, apart from being the main watershed of the island, it is also where all the animals, it's the wealth of the island in terms of the animals that it supports, the plant life, and also of course our main bird, as we call it, the white-tailed sabre-winged hummingbird, a bird that was thought to be extinct because it can only be found on Tobago's main ridge and northeast Venezuela, nowhere else on the planet. So from even that standpoint, we should understand again the importance of the main ridge forest reserve. Some hummingbirds build cone-shaped nests like the hermits, the rufous-breasted hermit, which is the only bird on the island, the only hummingbird that has that decurved bill, so he can get into certain flowers which the other hummers and other nectar-feeding birds would not be able to get into. Although you see instances where birds pierce the base of the flower in order to get the nectar. Um, Banana quits do that, and other birds do it. They are called nectar robbers, really, because they're not doing the job of cross-pollinating. But the sabre wings, they go up about 20 feet up into the bamboo, usually, with their nest. And one egg is laid. It takes approximately 19-20 days to incubate the eggs, and another 19-20-21 days for the bird to fledge. One of the beautiful birds that you can see is the rufous-tailed jacama. It is a beta, and the colors on that bird is just amazing. Depending on the direction which the light catches the bird, you can see different colors. At one time you can see gold, you can see green or blues. Alright, the male is distinguished from the female by a white throat, which we call a white head bow tie, and the female has that sort of what we call rufous brown breast as well. A lovely bird, a bird that can, if you see something, you're driving along, you just see a flash of green or blue or gold, you know, it could be a rufous-tailed jacama. In the rainforest, you have all different types of activities taking place. We have what we call a singles bar, which is a lek, and there's no better example of that than the mannequins. In Tobago, again, we are very fortunate. We only have one mannequin species out of 59 altogether, and that's the blueback mannequin. If you are lucky, you can see this spectacle. It begins with a chirping song high up in the canopy by the male birds, who have bright red heads, blue on the back, red feet. All these colors are used in their courtship display when they are trying to attract a female. Once she comes on the lek, they would even go a step further in making a very unique song and dancing, skipping over each other. And all this is just in order to attract this female. But if they are successful, usually they are, this dance goes up to a high pitch. And at the end of that high pitch, you hear the sound of a whistle, like if a football match is being blown off by a referee. And then the female would mate with the dominant male. People come to these islands and they still see that we have time. We have time to lime, we have time to chat, we have time to say hello, good morning, and that sort of thing. And so we have an opportunity here of reversing that culture, you know, making people think, well, okay, life is not all just being very busy and having absolutely no time for each other, and not being our brother's keeper, as we say. So we still have that opportunity, and we could pass that on to many visitors when they visit our island.